Hey guys, welcome to Better Engineering and Management Podcast. Today we have my dear friend Mohit Choudhary joining us to discuss with us how can we do better user story mapping. Mohit, please welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Pradeep. Thank you for inviting me.
Mohit, please give us a small brief about yourself.
Yeah, sure. So I guess I have a couple of years of experience working as a business analyst, and that is where I kind of after 4 or 5 years of being an analyst, I progressed into product management, which was in itself was a very interesting journey because um, I kind of like there were two parts to me. Like kind of I could have grown into the analytics career or could have done something very interesting. And product management kind of always appealed to me because it felt like something very entrepreneurial. Uh, Along with that, I mainly like worked in the transportation sector. So I worked for a car rental company, Zoom Car, which is where I worked for like 5 years, and I helped develop many products over there, like their Android app, their iOS application, the entire IoT stack which was there. Later, then I also have some experience working for B2B freight transportation as well, which is where I was there with working along with Pradeep, and we kind of like did that for like about 2 years. Then I guess right now I am kind of like working to build a coffee company of my own. So which is it's pretty small yet. We have not really kind of like secured any funding or anything. It's kind of like very much like bootstrapped. So that's what I am kind of currently involved in.
That's very interesting, Mohit. So coming back to our topic, Mohit, how exactly does user story mapping process work? Please explain to our viewers.
See, I think let's split the word apart, right? User story mapping. So let's first talk about what is a user story, right? So why do we have a user story? User story usually is the main idea is in order to kind of understand the need of a particular user, which is what we call a user story. So since I think we would be taking an example of how do we go ahead building a coffee application in this case, maybe like we can jump couple of steps ahead, right? So a user story would be something like, let's say, I think all of the audience would have used an e-commerce website, right? A user story is simply what does a user need. So maybe like as a user, I'm able to log in into my account and see my previous orders. So that's a particular user story, right? And it's a very simple example. Now, in the word user story mapping, map itself, what is a map, right? A map is a combination of what is a usual map? Like map of the world is a combination of many different places. You have these continents, you have these countries, you have rivers and oceans, right? And a map essentially tells you how do you move from point A to point B, like what could be the
Yeah.
different mediums of moving ahead. So now when we are kind of, let's say we are already deep down within a project and we want to develop many user stories. Imagine an e-commerce inside our head, right? That's where we need a particular map in order to understand all the user needs, their interconnectedness of it, and really it kind of helps in the prioritization of it so that we do not go mad and end up becoming a feature factory. It's like, okay, let's do this, let's do that. No. So it's kind of in order to kind of have a grip on everything. So that is where we need a map of user stories, which we are calling as user story mapping.
That's very interesting. So what you are saying is essentially just like a map, real world map connects all the places of the world. And a user story essentially connects the user's needs with the, different components. And
Exactly.
the- okay. So at the
So
center of it is the need of the user that needs to be kind of
absolutely.
presented. And that's where the user story map comes in the picture.
Like for
Okay.
example, I'm very fascinated with maps, like geographical maps in general, right? And let's say at the heart of it, if you want to understand user need, you also first have to let's go a step before that, right? What how to identify what does user need? In order to identify what does a user need, we need to be very clear what is the desired journey that we want for the user. So, for example, if taking an example of a geographical map, if I say we want a user to go from New Delhi to Bangalore in the cheapest way possible, right?
Okay.
So that is a user journey that we have desired, right? And it
Okay.
could actually lead into something else. And there are many ways to solutions, right? You could go ahead and develop many user stories for the same. So
Understood. That's a very interesting analogy. So basically, just like a map helps in a journey, right? You want to go from point A to point B. Here also, you are trying to cover a distance where there is a user need, and you want to fulfill that need. And that this user story map is essentially a tool for
Exactly, it's
fulfillment of that journey. Okay.
absolutely very simple and like a collection of, if like, since I am guessing this is a technical podcast where a lot of people would already kind of be versed in what is a sprint, what are stories. Maybe I would have a little bit of idea what an epic is as well, right?
Right.
Collection of user needs is basically is what end up becoming an epic, really. And is like, maybe right now for this, all we want to solve is like, how does user go from New Delhi to Bangalore? And that is just like one epic for this particular time. And there could be many different epics. So
Okay. Okay.
yeah,
So epic is essentially a theme where your multiple related stories are kind of collected together. Okay.
yeah, yeah,
Cool. I think so. Let's jump to the real world example is we're discussing just now. Suppose we want to develop user story mapping around an app for buying coffee online, okay? And an app where users can select from a list of coffees and place an order or create a weekly or monthly subscription, okay? They can buy the coffee immediately or they can place an order for subscription, which can be weekly or monthly. So how will the whole user story mapping process happen here?
yeah. Sure. I think we can actually like make it a little fun by. So I've already there is a little bit of map that I was working on, and maybe
Sure.
both of us can actually like start playing with the cards as well.
Okay.
Play it around a little bit as well. So I'll try sharing my screen. So
Sure.
do let me
That would
know
be
if
fun.
it's visible. Where do I share my screen from?
Cool. Okay.
You see the Miro board?
Yeah, I can see the board. Yeah.
Okay. So what we wanted to do is, let's say, the journey that we talked about. What talked about is a user should be able to kind of get on an application. It's
Okay.
a so in general, like either. I think the question that you took is an application. It could be a website as well. At the end of the day, we can like very interchangeably use those words. Pretty much our user story mapping would not be very different. But in talking in terms of, let's introduce few words that are
Sure.
used in user story mapping while trying to explain. So the
Mm-hmm.
yellow cards that we see is basically the user journey, which are also called horizontal cards because they are horizontal in nature. And the ones which you see in red, these are called vertical cards. These are basically the bunch of user stories or needs that we have just kind of like brainstormed upon and try to place it along with the map, along with the user journey. And
Okay.
so if you kind of like, I think we'll have to let's go through the user journey in terms of what people go through while buying a coffee on an application. So
Sure.
they land onto the home page or the home screen.
Mm-hmm.
The user kind of like goes across and explores. Usually on a home page, there are many different things, right? You directly do
Mm-hmm.
not directly go to the store, and they are able to like find the store, and then they are able to find different different roast types, which is basically like different types of categories, right? Coffee would also have different types of categories like any other
Okay.
product.
Okay.
The user is able to kind of like, in terms of whatever parameters, then they are able to select the coffee that they want, which is where the product selection has happened. After the
Okay.
product selection has happened, there is a certain element in the assignment that we are discussing is we want to create like a subscription cycle. So either, and also because coffee is at the end of the day is a food product, so people who
Right.
consume coffee, they kind of consume it on a particular frequency. So it's
Mm-hmm.
like a, just like your toothpaste, which has a certain frequency of like couple of 3 weeks. In fact, toothpaste and coffee has a very similar frequency. Uh,
Interesting.
so this is where a person is able to kind of like either go for a one-time purchase or they could select a subscription. And the
Mm-hmm.
user goes through the checkout, which is like a usual e-com checkout, and then a payment flow. Payment flow would also involve a little more attributes here because if you're going into a subscription, there are multiple ways to kind of go the payment.
Right.
And then you track the order status. So
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I'll stop if you want to like kind of want us to deep dive into a point more
Yeah.
in
So
any of
I think
the
Mohit,
user journey
yeah,
right now.
this is very, very interesting. I must say, it is very interesting to me because of the fact, first of all, it simplifies the whole process because it is visual. and then the division kind of the role that each card is playing, right? It kind of brings elements of its own. So I can focus on either one particular aspect of the journey, or I can kind of go into the details of that particular journey, and then I can also see how one step by step, one phase leads to another phase. So this presentation, this visual journey, right, it's very, very interesting and it's very appealing. That's the first thing I would like to say. This is what makes, I think, developing software fun also. You know, apart from programming, since this visual representation is also something I can say, you can easily connect different kind of people, right? Like whether it's sales, marketing, product, because everybody can see this board and they can immediately sense what we are trying to do. So since the journey is kind of elaborated in such a visual manner, that thing is kind of coming out to me. So
Actually,
I
that
think
is
we should
a
start with the, yeah,
yeah.
go ahead.
And I would just want to stress on the point which you said, right? That many
Mhm.
different teams can actually see it, and that's
Right.
exactly the point that it came out to you like that is
Mhm.
very apparent because that's how it is needs to be developed. Like for example, it is not something like a product manager should sit in his like room and kind of like do it on its own by just working with one developer. No, has nothing to do with either the seniority level of a person or the field that it is working in,
Right.
and
Right.
that is why it is a very much a collaborative activity which even a developer and a
Mhm.
marketeer or a legal person all should come onto the level to agree that this is what we are trying to achieve. This is what the user journey is. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like you can just kind of take all these cards and paste it on a wall in, let's say, in office. Everybody can go and see and can immediately understand what user story you are developing and what will be the impact of it. Hey guys, just for the sake of completion, the tool that Mohit has used here is Miro app. It is a very good tool, and if you are planning to do story mapping, you should definitely check this tool out. Though this is not a sponsored video, but this tool is really amazing, so I wanted to discuss about it. This tool offers a lot of features, lot of tutorials, lot of templates, so it should be very easy for you to get started on this tool. This is almost like a default tool which almost everybody uses, and Miro also offers a free plan for you, so definitely explore this tool. As I mentioned already, this is not a sponsored video, so we are recommending it because we actually love this tool. Also, if you would like to have the entire storyboard that Mohit has made, just drop in the comments, just mention here story or story map, and I will send the entire file to you. Let's go back to the topic. What are the different aspects of it? So let's focus here. The first card that you have mentioned here, right, that is, I believe, user lands on the home page. So
Hmm.
that's the first phase of the journey because that's a user is going on the app or on the website for buying coffee. And then, can you explain the red cards here? What exactly those
Yeah,
red
yeah, yeah,
cards
yeah,
are
absolutely.
doing?
See, definitely the first step is going to land on the homepage
Mhm.
because it also depends on how the user have discovered your application or your website as well. It could be like maybe like a blog on a medium have kind of like redirected to it, or there is like a company story, or maybe they're like some very key featured products, or there is
Mhm.
a direct like very simply if you find like some applications or some websites they have like a direct shop now big button. I love that
Mhm.
actually, just like what Google
Okay.
has, right? There is no bullshit, directly you have like a search button there and you enter
Right.
inside. And
Mhm.
now it is also very common to have a social media integration on the homepage. Like what people are
Right.
trying to do is like whatever is happening on my Instagram also
Mhm.
flows to my application or website as well.
Right.
Now let's introduce few more technical words over here. We
Mhm.
call these vertical cards because they are vertical in nature. There is
Mhm.
right now I have like worked very fast onto it, but what one should do along with their team is while we talked
Mhm.
about is we should arrange them in a manner that the
Mhm.
top one is the highest priority and the below one is the lowest priority. And if you look at this, like for example, having a blog or having a company story or having a shop, they are all disconnected to each other. Like for example,
Right.
we do not require all of them in order to be on our homepage. We can actually like decide in terms of like what is really needed. So
Mhm.
let's maybe like
So these are,
while
in a
we
way, what I understand is these are all stories in themselves. These red cards, they may be linked, they may not necessarily be linked with each other, and they can be developed individually.
they can or they cannot. So that is where the beauty of which is like you kind of the stories that you combine together is kind of another word, another jargon, but basically you combine together to make an epic. And
Okay,
really, there is how do you make an epic out of it? Is one is there are sometimes things are connected in nature. Like for example, uh, if we jump to the second part, which is user is exploring the website, right? Goes into the account and reorders the password. Very clearly, if there is a feature of account is not there, how can you like look at your past orders? So you
sure.
know that in order to develop the second one, you need to have the first one. It's obviously. So that is why the second one cannot be executed until the first one is.
Okay, okay,
Uh, yeah.
correct. So you were saying, so I think this whole red, all these red cards, right, combined with the white, the yellow card, they are in a way making an epic, right, because they are part of the same theme in a way, right? Because so you can say there is a theme of user exploration, and these are all the sub stories linked to it, and they can in a way
Yeah, actually,
make an epic,
let's
right?
let's 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 do that. Actually, let's make an epic at the end of this
Okay,
exercise. So, in the first part, user ads on the homepage. Definitely, you need to have a shop now button. It's more important than having a blog.
right,
Sure,
okay,
right. And I think having a featured story is also more important. Featured products is more important.
yeah, that's
Uh,
marketing.
yeah, maybe social media interaction. I think. Do you agree with this priority order, more or less?
Shop now button is the most important, obviously, because you don't want to lose customers when they have
Yeah, I
already
don't
made
want
to
to.
move to. Okay, and featured products, I believe makes sense because you see, people should be feel the kind of impact on the landing page, right? And they should feel that they should develop some kind of trust on it, right? So if you have some kind of
Yeah,
stories and
yeah.
featured products, they will feel, yes, it's a good product. There are many people talking about it. I would like to buy this product. So yeah, buying and developing trust of the people that they would actually want to buy. Both of them are more important. Social media integration is important, but I would say probably not very important also. So it can go in here as you have put, like you put here. And I mean, the blog and social media are more or less kind of similar things. So which one is important? I don't know. I think
No, I think
we
it's
should
it's
do some kind
fine.
of a voting here, like what many.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
if
yeah,
you are working in an
absolutely.
office setup, right, you can
That's
probably ask your customers what's more important to them, or So one good thing is like there are many things which can be done with this board. So for example, just now you change the priority, right? This is so easy to kind of you create a board, you create all the epics or let's say sub stories, and just change the priority of the this card, and you have already changed the you have done the reprioritization in a way, right? Or let's say
yeah,
you have done the
exactly.
prioritization,
Yeah, we just did the reprioritization and prioritization. And just imagine if,
right?
like, for example, either it if it is a remote working environment, you can do it on something like Miro. If you have the
Mhm.
luxury of an office, do it with sticky notes, like maybe in your
Right,
conference room. So it's definitely
right.
kind of helps.
It very much simplifies the whole. I think process of kind of coming up with the right stories for development. And see, yeah, coming back to the topic, so yes, so we can kind of change the priority just by kind of the top stories are high priority and below stories are comparatively lower priority. Of course, in a real setup, it would happen based on many discussions probably and kind of some kind of quoting or maybe talking to the customer, what do they want first, depending upon the scenario in which you are in. So now and one theme could be one epic, that is one yellow card or now the red card below. They can kind of make one theme and which is one epic. Of course, they are kind of doing a slightly general discussion. It can have many, flavors and so yeah. Please carry on, Mohit. It's very interesting.
Yeah, so let's go into. So you have landed on the home page, then you have uh, basically gotten into your account because the user wanted to see his past orders.
Right, right,
You have found a store. Now, the store means like you have all the coffees over there, right?
yeah,
In
right,
terms of coffee, you there are like user preferences. There are sometimes on coffee website there are cafe owners buying the coffee. There are
right.
sometimes people like us sitting at home buying the coffee. So they have a very different mindset in terms of
Okay,
like one would be going for an order value of like about 15,000 rupees, and the other guy is
mm,
trying to spend only 1,000 rupees. So you could see like
okay.
the mental perspective they have is very different. So they also explore. So
So,
uh,
Mohit, one more question. You have already explained in a way or other. What's the main difference between yellow cards and red cards, like the horizontal cards and vertical cards?
see.
designing these cards, right, what should he keep in mind at what goes into the yellow cards and what goes into the red cards? Is there any guideline that you can give here?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So the yellow card is each step of the user's journey. Right? We want the user, where do we want the user to start from? User has landed on your home page, and
Okay.
at the end of the day, we want the user to receive their coffee, right? Or whatever
Hmm.
the basically the end of the step. So
Okay.
this yellow card is not a story, it is neither an epic, it is basically your user journey that we are trying to fulfill. And
Okay.
now it all depends. I'm talking about the red cards. Red cards is each is basically a user story. In some
Okay.
cases, each could actually be like a feature as well, or maybe a collection of those red cards could actually become a feature. So
Okay. Okay.
that is what we are gonna look at. But
Okay.
and Um, so the entire idea is like, for example, when you are sitting with your team, right, and there are like
Mm-hmm.
many different kinds of people, and they kind of come up is like, oh, this is how they should buy the coffee, or oh, this is how should. So this entire map is like a dumping ground. You basically
Okay.
dump your user stories without worrying about what is important, what is not important. So
Okay.
the
Okay.
entire essence, the entire crux of a user story mapping is that you will get to know what is important and what is not important to build. Like for example, right now there was not a single slight tinge of
Mm.
disagreement between us whether the social media integration should be at the end or not.
Right.
So nobody in their right mind would
Mm.
actually keep talking about building the social media integration without having the shop now button. So and and we also did not at the same time did not disagree with the point that yes, social media integration is very important right now, and it's become quite common for applications to have it. So
Okay. Okay.
that's
That's
the
very
entire perspective. You hear
looking forward to
everybody,
say.
right? Yeah,
Uh-huh. Since this whole user story map kind of puts a perspective also, right? That this is what we're going to do, and many people can kind of see it together. It's easy to share your ideas and kind of bring people on board. So if there are 10 people, right, you can show this map, and the chances are of disagreement become lesser and lesser because the way it is prioritized, the way the flow is there, right? Everyone can kind of visualize in his mind, okay, this makes sense. That's very interesting. And you also mentioned that this is also a place for brainstorming, right? Where you first thing you are doing is you're collecting a lot of stories, a lot of ideas, that is, and just putting them here. And then you can also reprioritize, as we just
yeah,
did. And
absolutely.
okay,
And that
in a
that
way you're doing the
that
planning already. Okay, okay,
that in a way is like, for example, we are talking about user stories will end up becoming, let's for the sake of this discussion, we don't have this application because it
hmm,
also depends where the project is. The application could already be
right,
there
hmm,
right now. Let's say we don't have an application, so what we only be focusing is an MVP, right? So
okay,
that is
hmm,
where it kind of ends up. From user stories it becomes epic. From epic it start taking the outlook of a roadmap, and once you
okay,
have your roadmap and prioritization clear, it also,
hmm,
because you have already dumped all the user stories in the first go.
right,
When the team started, and the team had like many diverse people, and they were like kind of was in this mode of, you were able to also tap into the excitement of the people as well before development, that you have dumped everything which was possible and you have gone into the divergent way of thinking.
hmm,
So,
hmm, hmm,
and you can always come look at this and see, is like, maybe it does not make sense to do it right now, but after
hmm,
6 months that particular story could very well be
right,
here, and which is what we call a backlog is. So in a way
right.
you get your backlog also from this.
So since different people have different ways of thinking, this board is a great idea to kind of collect all those thoughts because if you just put everything in text, right? Some people sometimes don't really read it very thoroughly, and they won't feel interested, right? Because but since it is so visual and easy to kind of give your ideas and opinions on, collecting a diverse area of ideas is also very easy with this board, is what I'm understanding. Okay,
Yeah,
very
absolutely,
interesting.
absolutely.
Okay,
So,
okay, please
okay,
go ahead, Mohit.
so yeah, so I guess, let's say we do this activity, and we are here, like the user is there, and is able to is on the store page and is actually already kind of like selecting, like deciding how to select the coffee. So they can do the coffee selection by roast level, by geography, by roasting date, by bag
Okay,
size. And like for example, it is like, what I being in this industry is like, geography really doesn't matter much. Maybe like
mm,
what will matter is like how big is the bag sizes, like in terms of, are you, like, what is the size of the product that you're buying, and
Okay.
maybe that is what you would want to build first, right? Then let's say you have already selected the coffee, then the product page has like some images and videos about it. It has some description. It might have the images of the farmers over there. Like, this is all like, because still you really want to keep tapping in the excitement of the user. You are still not like made the purchase. Even though the user has selected the product, there is still a very high likelihood of a drop of chance. Uh, Drop off actually really, once you tap the user to the checkout page, this is where you have really secured it, but you have to like do everything possible to move the customer to the checkout page as fast as possible.
Okay. I think
So
yeah, this is a great way of kind of finding kind of getting your targets, what you want to achieve in the whole story. Since the last card is there, yellow card, where the checkout is mentioned, you want to take the users from this step to that step finally.
see, Pradeep,
That's interesting.
absolutely. So user journey at the end of the day, this is what people mention,
Right.
use the word as a conversion funnel as well. Might as
Right.
well use this and put the numbers over there. That what is your
Right.
current conversion number, and you can check in terms of the user stories. Maybe let's say from the product page to the checkout page, you have a drop of 50% right now. You are converting 50% of the user, and maybe after doing this particular story, you can directly see, oh, you executed only one story. So that way, it
Okay.
kind of becomes checking the impact as well. So
Okay.
a lot of ways you can actually like look at this particular map.
Okay, I think that's an interesting point to mention because what happens is when you are in the churn of development, right, you don't see the whole picture. So let's say you may be kind of putting too much thought into a particular step of the story, but you may not be thinking how does the whole, whole user story connects, that the user goes from the leftmost part to the rightmost part. Since you
Mhm,
are kind of stuck in a particular story, but if you have this whole picture in mind, then you
mhm.
will know that this thing is important, but probably not as important as kind of helping the user go from beginning to and to the checkout page, as you mentioned already. So it will
Absolutely.
automatically kind of help in prioritization at every level, whether you are a developer or whether you are a manager or whether you are owner of this particular website software.
So
Interesting.
if we,
Everyone
yeah,
will have some perspective here.
no, really. Like for example, the prioritization is, let's say if you have the drop off numbers here from checkout to payment as only 10%, and the drop off from, let's say, selecting the frequency of purchase to checkout is about 50%, then who in their sane mind want to develop stories from on the checkout flow? Why do you want to improve your
Right.
checkout flow?
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
So that's where you keep getting your roadmap. That's where the
Okay.
stress about that, it is a living document that needs to be
Okay.
continuously updated. Otherwise, it will, of course, lose its relevance.
So as you already mentioned, I think that if you want to categorize all these stories, you can create a theme or epic. So that already answers my next question: how will we categorize these stories? So let me move to the next question. Like, how is this process different or better than normal story development?
See, normal story development is, see, first of all, I think it also depends where in terms of your project development you are, right? I think this is very helpful when you are kind of like at the start of the project, where you kind of like really do not understand like how do you want to like achieve.
Hmm.
Like you don't have this application, there is no MVP, nothing is there, and you want to like kind of like execute it very properly. Then this kind of like really makes sense because it has elements of brainstorming,
Right.
prioritization, dividing into MVPs, and kind of like finally reaching the flow.
Hmm.
Normal, but this would actually be at the same time, let's say if you are already, your application is already out there for last couple of years, and all you wanted to build, let's say,
Hmm.
you know for a fact you want to build is like a subscription service, right? So then maybe if you haven't done this activity of user story mapping, doing this activity one time is going to take some cost, right? It's
Okay.
like almost like it's a capital investment, one time capital investment. But let's say if your application is already mature and you're very clear, then you might as well directly jump into the normal user story development.
Okay. 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 So what I understand is this process is good for ideation and brainstorming, where you are not clear yet what to do and what exactly are the steps that you want to execute. So then it's like a whiteboard where you can kind of generate a lot of ideas and then decide what to do. But once you have a mature system and framework, and let's say you are in a certain stage of development where your app is ready and a lot of things are there already, then you probably don't know because don't need this story mapping because then you were just kind of putting more details in the existing stories. making the checkout page better, making the, each step is already implemented. So you're just kind of putting more details in these stories. You can use tip, but I think it will not be very much needed as much as in the beginning of the whole journey. Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So, what I understood is this user story map helps in ideation. Does it also help in implementation in any? Like, can the developers also use it? And what would their roles be here? Like, let's say development team or the QA team, should they also be kind of taking interest in these maps and
No, I think that is where it gets into very danger zone when you call it that it is so important only for ideation. So because then what is going to happen is, like, maybe I can almost imagine a team coming and spending like a week in developing this and then forgetting about this, right? And then only maybe the product manager or the analyst is taking care of it, right? But this is
Mhm.
almost something like which should be kind of like visited again whenever you're doing sprint planning, because that's where you kind of like really shocking out. What do you do in sprint planning? You are basically kind of carving out, you're doing a prioritization and you are carving out what user stories you need to execute. And this kind of like becomes useful at that point. And it actually becomes useful not just for like maybe like a product manager or an analyst, but everybody in the team. Because if a marketeer is coming to you and is like, oh no, I really want to like improve the payment flow, but that is something you can show very clearly that it is not really important to kind of develop the payment flow. We should be
Mhm.
focusing on something else. So
Yeah.
it, in a way, kind of helps the entire team build the right thing which is needed in order to fulfill this user journey, and that is what we want.
Interesting. I think at this point, I would also like to ask all the viewers who are watching this if they have found this discussion interesting and if they have actually used user story mapping into their uh, organization, what how they have used this process and what was the result that they had achieved. Please comment it out and let us also know. And Mohit, this was a great discussion, great conversation. I'm sure all the viewers who are watching this will learn a lot. I think particularly people who are like, not just people who are in the development, but let's say product managers or let's say sales and marketing. All those people also can derive great benefits from it because, as I mentioned already, user story mapping is a funnel in itself, right? So they should also kind of participate in it. And I don't know. I think in every office there should be a wall where you should just put all the user stories and all. Half of the work is done because everybody who comes in the morning and sees this wall, he knows where exactly at which step of the journey he is and what details he has to fill. So everybody is kind of aligned already. Anyway, your whole project can has been done if you have kind of created the user story mapping rightly. It's a great tool and obviously very impactful.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Mohit. Thanks for this conversation and have a great day.
Thank you.
All the viewers, please subscribe for many such amazing discussions. As I already mentioned, please drop your comments and leave your feedback. If you have any queries, please let me know that also. And let me also know what other topics would you be interested in. We will try to bring specialists in those areas. Thank you. Have a nice day.